If you love balance but can't stand chaos, you're going to want to stick around. Today, we're exploring symmetry and asymmetry. Symmetry is everywhere, from the balanced wings of a butterfly to the even patterns of a snowflake. In physics, symmetry means something stays the same even when you change its position or orientation. Think of it like a mirror image. The left side looks just like the right. Emmy Noether's law of conservation of angular momentum is a perfect example. Imagine a spinning top. No matter how it spins, the distance from the center stays the same. That's symmetry in action. Now let's talk asymmetry. Picture a seesaw with one side heavier than the other. This imbalance in mass causes it to tip, clearly not symmetrical. In physics, asymmetry means that when you change something's position, it doesn't stay the same. From left to right invariant symmetry that displays distance from center axis, this is a representation of Emmy Noether's law conservation of angular momentum as distance a being the same distance from the center axis of rotation. The next second drawing in the center of the page on the top is x equal sign. X is symmetry, amplitude and frequency are equal symmetrical operation. Below drawing is xy, where x is a greater distance than y, thus amplitude and frequency are not equal, and this tabletop system is moving due to the asymmetric mass load about the center axis of rotation. To the right of the page is axis of rotation of system, and the four armatures display the eccentric mass load of each armature on the right side of the center axis of rotation, and the eccentric mass load that displays the force arrow and the direction this system travels in a direction that is constant. The four-phase motor generator system and the stator induce electrical energy, see attached four-phase motor generator drawings in Fig 5, and the armatures are reacting with the stator wall as they revolve about the center axis of rotation. The armature's rotors are generated by the rotating four-phase magnetic fields, interact with the stator wall. Fig 3 displays 302, the asymmetric eccentric mass load G, out furthest from the center axis of rotation distance E1, and I distance F1 from the center axis of rotation. J and H asymmetric eccentric mass loads are also located in E1. Asymmetric mass load I is distance F1 from the center axis of rotation. 304 displays asymmetric eccentric mass loads J and G distance E, 2 distance from the center axis of rotation. Asymmetric mass loads I and H are distance F2. 306 displays eccentric mass load J out furthest from the center axis of rotation, and asymmetric eccentric mass loads I and G are located in distance E3 from the center axis of rotation. Asymmetric eccentric mass load H is distance F3 from the center axis of rotation. 308 I and J are distance E4 from the center axis of rotation. H and G are distance F4 from the center axis of rotation. And asymmetric eccentric mass loads H and G are distance F4 from the center axis of rotation. In Fig 4 displays 402 asymmetric eccentric mass loads. I the greatest distance from the center axis of rotation. Asymmetric eccentric mass loads H and J are distance E5 from the center axis of rotation. Asymmetric eccentric mass load G is distance F5 from the center axis of rotation. 404 asymmetric eccentric mass loads H and I are distance E6 from the center axis of rotation. Asymmetric eccentric mass load G and H are distance F6 from the center axis of rotation. 406 asymmetric eccentric mass load H is the greatest distance from the center axis of rotation. Asymmetric eccentric mass loads G and I are distance E7 from the center axis of rotation. Asymmetric eccentric mass load J is distance F7 from the center axis of rotation. 408 asymmetric eccentric mass loads G and H are distance E8 from the center axis of rotation. Asymmetric eccentric mass loads G and H are distance E8 from the center axis of rotation. Asymmetric eccentric mass loads J and I are distance F8 from the center axis of rotation. This cycle repeats, and the asymmetric eccentric mass loads go back to Fig 3. So next time you see something perfectly balanced or totally asymmetric, you'll know the science behind it. Symmetry and asymmetry, simple yet fascinating.